Good morning. My name is Amanda Rivera. I'm the hearing examiner presiding over today's case. The date is June 25th, 2025, and this is case REZ2024-00010. It's a conventional rezoning request for property on Saddle Road. Because this is a quasi-judicial hearing, all evidence and testimony must be taken under oath. So if you intend to speak, if you could please raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll provide is the truth? Thank you. We do not have members of the public here today, so I will dispense with those instructions and we can begin whenever the applicant is ready.
Excuse me, Madam Hearing Examiner.
Yes.
Before we get started, I would like to provide that this...
The affidavit of publication?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, hold on one moment. Okay, yes, so that would be Staff Exhibit 2. Staff Exhibit 1 is the staff report itself. Thank you. Okay, now we can proceed.
Good morning. For the record, Patty Kulak with RVI on behalf of the applicant. My credentials are on file and I have testified before this board and been sworn in as an expert in planning and zoning matters. For the record, I have a copy of the 48-hour notice that was emailed over and a copy of the PowerPoint that I'll hand over for exhibits.
Thank you. Thank you. So the 48-hour letter is applicant Exhibit 1, and then the PowerPoint presentation will be applicant Exhibit 2. Thank you.
As we mentioned, this hearing today is for Saddle Road Rezone. This is REZ 2024-00010. Our project team, and we have Chris Lenzano with Phoenix Associates. He is our applicant, and then you have Patty and Fred from RVI on behalf of the applicant. Our request this morning is to rezone the property at 13451 Saddle Road from the current zoning, which is general commercial, to light industrial. Looking at a high-level view of the property, we are right here in our blue. The site is just under 2 acres. It is about a half a mile east of I-75 and a mile west of the Southwest Florida International Airport. The site currently is vacant and undeveloped. Looking at our future land use designation, the future land use designation is the trade port. We are not proposing to change that designation, and it is consistent with the property surrounding on all 4 sides. It is worth noting that the site is also within the Gateway Airport Planning District and that airport obstruction notification zone, again being 1 mile from the airport. The current zoning of the property, as I mentioned, is general commercial, shown in red on the left side of the screen. We are proposing to change it to that purple color, the light industrial, to be consistent with the property surrounding to the east and the south. Those properties that are already zoned light industrial do have 2 current development orders in process that I'll walk through, but it is worth noting that should this application get approved, this property potentially will be combined with those for those development orders. Looking at the development orders, the first one was DOS 2023-00110. That was a request for land clearing. And the second one is DOS 2024-00179. That request is for flexible commercial. That is in for review, and as you'll see on the screen, it is all of the properties outlined in blue. Notice that our property is the only one that is not within those development order requests, but potentially will be in the future. The flexible commercial from the DOS 2024 is on its 3rd round of resubmittal. We are waiting to resubmit until this hearing takes place, and it is for 5 flexible commercial buildings with the existing wetlands remaining unchanged.
So that DOT, if you can go back, it does include the differently colored blue box?
Yes. So it includes all 6 of those properties. Our site is the only one that's right over here.
Thank you.
During the review for this, we did have a availability letter from the Lee County Utilities, and during those DOs, we are in the process of working through bringing the utilities to the site. We have obtained approval for the infrastructure installment. The first one is the extension of a 12-inch water main off of Saddle Road to be connected to the water on site. And the second is a force main that is proposed to extend onto the site from Halter Lane and Tree Line Avenue. Looking at the Lee plan for consistency, we are within the trade port future land use designation, as I mentioned, that does support the development for properties adjacent to the airport in that light industrial zoning. We are also consistent with objective 2.1 and policy 2.1.1, which is again that development location, to talk about the compact development and reducing the urban sprawl. Looking at those DOs, we are trying to keep the development within that area by adding this parcel to the light industrial zoning district. I went over the availability for the infrastructure to be consistent with policy 7.1.4. We have shown that there is adequate facilities and availability, and that the developer is funding the extension of those utilities during that DO process. With the industrial zoning that is being requested, we are compatible with policy 7.1.1 and 7.1.3, which is ensuring that there is no residential uses permitted within a industrial zoning district, and that we will meet the environmental, utilities, and transportation standards. And the last one is the airport compatibility, since we are within that airport zone, which is policy 47.2.5, ensuring that when the development takes place that we will be consistent with the FAA guidelines regarding the wildlife hazard zone, and we're also compliant with the surface water management goals, and that will be reviewed at the DO stage. There's also a more comprehensive review of the lead plan consistency within the staff report that was provided, and also the narrative that was in the agenda packet provided, and staff has shown consistency with these, and we are in agreement with that. Looking at the rezone criteria, which is required for this request, we've gone over that the application complies with the lead plan, given that we are in the trade port future land use. We are consistent with the neighboring uses, and we will be hoping to continue the DO with the surrounding uses. We meet the land development code regulations. Since this is a conventional rezone, there are no deviations with this request, and all LDC requirements will be met at the time of DO. We are compatible with the surrounding land uses, given that the properties to the south and to the west are also zoned light industrial. We have adequate access, given we have access from Saddle Road, and we're also in close proximity to Halter Lane and Tree Line Avenue. The transportation impacts will be reviewed at the time of DO, but again, we do have access for them. And there's no planned adverse impact to the environment, but we will be reviewing that during the DO stage. And we are served by the urban services. Within the application narrative that was provided, we went over the proximity to all of the local required services, EMS, fire, and sheriff, and those will be provided by the South Trail. And the Lee County utilities confirm compatibility for water and sewer. Running through all of that, we agree with staff's recommendation of approval. We have prepared that staff report. We've shown that we support the goals and objectives and the policies within the Lee County Comprehensive Plan, and we have consistency with the LDC requirements for the conventional rezone, and we are compatible with our surrounding land use pattern. And with that, we request approval of our conventional rezone. I'll pass it over to staff unless you have any questions.
The question that I had was just, I know that the environmental analysis hadn't been completed yet, but it talked about the ERP modifications that would be happening. Has the jurisdictional determination been done yet?
Not yet.
Okay, because it looked like the DO plan is essentially using the entire footprint of this property for one of the buildings. I know that that's, again, not relevant for today. I'm just curious with respect.
Yeah, they did do a wetland, and the owner just paid the mitigation fees, I think, yesterday.
Okay.
It's all been addressed.
Thank you. I would assume so, and again, it's not. I'm just curious because I had the other cases that came in before this, and
Right.
so obviously they came in piecemeal, but you're doing a holistic development now, and so it's helpful to have the DO plans to inform that.
Right.
But it did talk about the wetland impact, so I appreciate that clarification.
We're the final piece to the puzzle.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm ready for staff whenever you're ready, Brianna.
Before I get started, I would like to provide you my presentation.
Yes, thank you. So that'll be staff exhibit 3. Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, my name is Brianna Schrader. I am a planner with the zoning section of community development. I have previously been qualified as an expert witness in the Lee County Land Development Code and Comprehensive Plan and wish to do so again today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. What I have presented here today is REZ 2024-00010, which is a conventional rezone by RVI and Landscape Architecture on behalf of the applicant, Phoenix Associates of Florida, to rezone approximately 1.5 acres from general commercial to light industrial. The subject property is 13451 Saddle Road, and it has not been cleared and is currently undeveloped. It is located south of Daniels Parkway and east of the intersection of Treeline Avenue South and Daniels Parkway. The subject property also abuts properties to the east and south that have been rezoned from agricultural to light industrial, just as the applicant had provided earlier, and will be discussed further in this presentation. The subject property is within the Trade Port Future Land Use category in accordance with the Lee Plan, and as stated before, the site is currently zoned general commercial. When it comes down to the surrounding area, the properties surrounding this site are all within the Trade Port Future Land Use category and the Gateway Airport Planning District. Additionally, none of these properties are developed. And to be more specific, properties located to the north of the subject property, directly across Daniels Parkway, are within the city of Fort Myers and are zoned general commercial, highway commercial, and agricultural. Properties located east of the subject property are zoned light industrial and industrial plan development. The site with an address of 13401 Saddle Road, which directly abuts the subject property, has been cleared of any vegetation through a vegetation permit and is part of the development order application that is in review. Properties located south of the subject property are zoned light industrial. These properties have been cleared up in accordance with a vegetation permit, and these properties are also part of the active development order application that is currently under review and includes the subject property. The properties located west of the subject property, directly across from Saddle Road, are zoned general commercial, and there are no active development orders currently on those sites. As stated before, the properties located to the east and south that abut the subject property have been rezoned to light industrial. Provided on this slide and within the stat report is a chart to show the addresses that are surrounding the subject property that are zoned light industrial. Lee County environmental staff conducted a site inspection for the subject property and identified vegetation such as cypress trees that indicate the site likely contains wetlands, which the applicant has stated they have mitigated. The sites abutting the subject property received an approved environmental resource permit as one development, and according to aerial imagery and the most recent site visit, the subject property has not been cleared of any vegetation. The applicant has submitted a request to the Southwest Florida Water Management District to add the subject property to the previously approved environmental resource permit. The subject property is prepared to be rezoned to the light industrial zoning district to unify this large tract of land, which will allow development to be cohesively built under the development order application that is currently under review and proposes to construct 5 multi-tenant flex buildings and the code required infrastructure improvements, and with the existing wetlands to remain unimpacted. Land Development Code Section 34-145 establishes the review criteria for conventional rezoning requests. The following slides will provide how the applicant has met the review criteria. Lee Plan Policy 1.1.13 of the Lee Plan establishes that this future land use category includes areas of commercial and industrial lands adjacent to the airport. These areas will include developments consisting of light manufacturing or assembly, warehousing, and other various uses, which are provided here. The proposed light industrial zoning district's permissible uses include categories specific to the trade port policy. The subject property is situated in an area appropriate for industrial zoning with neighboring properties located to the east and south that are zoned light industrial and industrial plan development. Rezoning to light industrial would be compatible with surrounding uses and would potentially expand development along Saddle Road as envisioned by the LEED plan, which is consistent with this LEED plan policy. Objective 2.1 of the LEED plan promotes contiguous and compact growth patterns which will be promoted through the rezoning process to contain urban sprawl. Policy 2.1.1 establishes that most residential, commercial, industrial, and public development is expected to occur within the designated future land use areas on the future land use map through the assignment of very low densities to the non-urban categories. Objective 2.2 of the LEED plan establishes that direct new growth to those portions of the future urban areas where adequate public facilities exist or are assured and where compact and contiguous development patterns can be created, development orders and permits will be granted only when consistent with the provisions of the Florida statute and concurrency requirements in the Land Development Code. Policy 2.2.1 establishes that any rezoning proposals will be evaluated as to the availability and proximity of the road network, central sewer and water lines, community facilities, and services such as schools, EMS, fire, and police protection, and other public facilities compatible with surrounding land uses and any other relevant facts affecting the public health, safety, and welfare. Rezoning the subject property to light industrial will provide consistency with the existing industrial development within the Tradeport future land use category and within the designated future suburban area as depicted on the future land use map, and promote growth where adequate public facilities exist and compact and contiguous development patterns can be created. With the subject property having frontage on Saddle Road and Halter Lane, access to the existing signalized intersection at Treeline Avenue will be available. Additionally, there is an existing sidewalk along the south side of Saddle Road that ties into the paved shoulder of Daniels Parkway, which connects to the shared use path on Treeline Avenue. The applicant provided a letter of availability from Lee County Utilities stating potable water and sanitary sewer are available for this location, but there are no connections available for the subject property, and further enhancements will need to be made to provide connections. Lastly, sufficient community facilities and services will be provided with the South Trail Fire Station, Emergency Medical Services, and Lee County Sheriff's main headquarters are all in close proximity to the site, which is consistent with this LEED plan objective and policies. As previously stated, the applicant has provided a letter of availability from Lee County Utilities stating potable water and sanitary sewer are available to the subject property, fulfilling requirements of standards 4.1.1 and 4.1.2, which establish that commercial or industrial developments that exceed 30,000 square feet of gross leasable floor area per parcel and generate more than 5,000 gallons of sewage per day must connect to potable water and sanitary sewer. Standard 4.1.4 of the LEED plan states that in any case where there exists or is the probability of environmentally sensitive areas as identified by the South Florida Water Management District or other applicable regulatory agency, the developer or applicant must prepare an environmental assessment that examines the existing conditions, addresses existing or anticipated environmental problems, and proposes means and mechanisms to protect, conserve, or preserve environmental and national resources. As stated earlier, the applicant has an approved environmental resource permit through the South Florida Water Management District for the neighboring properties and has applied for a modification to the existing ERP to include the subject property. The applicant notes that the developer will implement design and construction practices through the active development order to ensure that the new development and any additions to existing development do not degrade surface and groundwater quality. Lastly, the subject property is located within the Airport Wildlife Protection Zone, where upland habitats are discouraged for protection of wildlife. which is consistent with this LEED plan standard. Goal 7 of the LEED plan promotes opportunities for well-planned industrial development at suitable locations within the county. Policy 7.1.1 establishes specific factors that will be applied for industrial rezoning and development order applications. Policy 7.1.2 encourages industrial development in the trade port to future land use category, and any industrial development in this future land use category requiring a rezone and meeting DCI thresholds must be rezoned to a planned development. The subject property is already surrounded by the land that is within the industrial zoning district and resides within the future land use category as established by the LEED plan, and the request, if approved, will align the property with this future land use category. There are no variances that have been requested to coincide with this request, and development will adhere to the Land Development Code and other applicable regulations at the time of development order approval. The proposed rezone is in proximity to established major roadways of Treeline Avenue, Daniels Parkway, and Interstate 75. The proposed acre-and-a-half rezone does not meet the DCI thresholds as set forth in LDC Section 34-341B1D, so a planned development rezoning is not required. Staff would also like to put on the record that the preliminary site plan provided in the development order and in the staff report that is currently in review proposes the 5 multi-tenant buildings, and that the properties, when they are combined together, will also not meet the threshold to require a planned development rezone, which is consistent with this LEED plan goal and policies provided here. Policy 7.1.3 establishes industrial land uses must be located in areas appropriate to their special needs and constraints. The site is strategically located in an area that incentivizes industrial development with existing arterial and interstate roadway infrastructure and utility capacity in the vicinity of an international airport and in close proximity to existing or planned industrial developments. Policy 7.1.4 notes the timing and location of industrial development will be permitted only with the availability and adequacy of existing or planned services and facilities. The property is adequately served by fire, EMS, sheriff, and transportation services. Policies 7.1.6 and 7.1.7 establishes that industrial uses near any existing or planned residential uses must be adequately buffered and screened to prevent blight and noise pollution. Additionally, industrial development will not be permitted if it allows industrial traffic to travel through predominantly residential areas. The subject property does not abut any residential areas that will require enhanced screening or buffering, but will be required to meet the requirements established in LDC Section 10-416D. Policy 7.1.8 discourages conversion of lands within the future trade port to future land use category to other future land use categories to ensure adequate land is available for industrial uses and employment opportunities. The existing general commercial zoning allows a small number of uses that are appropriate for this area and limits the subject property's development potential with appropriate light industrial uses. Rezoning to light industrial will bring the property into compliance with the trade port to future land use category, which is consistent with the LEED plan policies provided here. Objective 47.2 of the LEED plan evaluates development compatibility in the vicinity to airports to preclude hazards of the aircraft operation and protect airport capacity and facilities. As previously stated in this presentation, the subject property is located within the Airport Wildlife Hazard Protection Zone, where wetland habitats are discouraged for protection of wildlife. The applicant has established they will comply with all FAA regulations to minimize attractiveness to wildlife at the time of local development order. The subject property is located within the Southwest Florida International Airport notification boundary and the applicant has indicated they will adhere to the tall structure review permit application process through the Lee County Port Authority as part of the development order process. The subject property is not located in any of the following zones, which is airport noise, airport runway protection, airport residential and educational facility protection, or the Southwest Florida International Airport Surveillance Radar Review. And the Lee County Port Authority has provided a letter addressing potential concerns and offers in a general comment, which is consistent with this Lee Plan objective. Objective 60.3 and policy 60.3.1 of the Lee Plan concerning critical areas states the 6 Mile Cypress Basin, as defined in LDC Chapter 10, is identified as a critical area for surface water management, and that the county will maintain existing regulations to protect the unique environmental and water resource values of these areas, of which the county will maintain provisions in Chapter 10 of the Land Development Code that reduce or eliminate the exemptions allowable in the 6 Mile Cypress Basin. The applicant has demonstrated compliance with the objective of seeking appropriate permitting through the South Florida Water Management District by obtaining an environmental resource permit that is currently undergoing modification. The proposed development is not seeking an exemption from the requirements for stormwater management or permitting that will be required to demonstrate compliance with applicable stormwater regulations at the time of local development order application, which is consistent with this Lee Plan objective and policy. Policies 123.2.4 and 123.3.1 of the Lee Plan encourages the protection of viable tracts of sensitive or high-quality natural plant communities within developments and encourages upland preservation in and around preserved wetlands to provide habitat diversity, enhance edge effect, and promote wildlife conservation. Environmental staff conducted a site inspection and observed no protected species on site, but did note the presence of indigenous vegetation as defined in the Land Development Code, and noted that the site contains wetlands and potentially some uplands. The applicant provided that any future development will be required to undergo environmental review during the development order process to ensure the protection of viable natural resources in accordance with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Lee Plan. Additionally, while upland preservation around wetlands is encouraged per policy 123.3.1, the subject property resides within the Airport Wildlife Hazard Protection Zone, which discourages the presence of habitat to avoid attracting wildlife, which is consistent with these Lee Plan policies. Policies 125.2.1 and 126.1.4 of the Lee Plan states new development and additions to existing development must not degrade surface and groundwater quality, and requires development designs to maintain or improve surface water flows, groundwater levels, and lake levels at or above existing conditions. The applicant or the subject property is not located near well field protection areas, and the applicant has established that subsequent development will comply with all applicable regulations to protect and maintain resources as required by the Lee County Land Development Code and the South Florida Water Management District ERP process. And as previously stated, the existing environmental resource permit for the neighboring properties, Zone Light Industrial, is prepared to be modified to include the subject property, which is consistent with these Lee Plan policies. As provided earlier in this presentation, the applicant is not requesting any deviations or variances to coincide with this conventional rezone request. The applicant has acknowledged that at the time of development, all applicable Land Development Code regulations will be met. The rezone request is compatible with the properties surrounding the site, and development of the subject property will be required to meet setbacks, open space, buffering, and light requirements containing in the Land Development Code at the time of development order approval. Staff finds the rezoning to light industrial is consistent and compatible with existing and planned uses surrounding the property. Subject property has sufficient access with site frontage on Saddle Road, which connects to Halter Lane, eventually providing access to a signalized intersection at Daniels Parkway and Treeline Avenue. A traffic impact statement will be required at the time of development order approval to demonstrate that development of the property will not adversely affect the level of service of the surrounding road network, and impacts to transportation facilities will be addressed by existing county regulations and the required traffic impact statement during development order review. Environmental Sciences staff states that the subject property does not contain sufficient acreage to meet the definition of a large project as defined in LDC section 10-415 and is therefore defined as a small development. The site contains indigenous plant communities but would not require indigenous open space, but the subject property will be required to provide 10% open space at the time of development order. The development order mentioned in the presentation provides a preliminary site plan to indicate the subject property will be developed in conjunction with the neighboring properties to the east and south that were rezoned to the light industrial zoning district through the conventional rezoning applications or projects that were provided earlier. At the time of development order, the proposed project will then be considered and reviewed as a large project and will need to meet the regulations established in LDC section 10-415, which provides that large projects will be required to provide 20% open space. Large developments with existing indigenous native vegetation communities must provide 50% of their open space requirement through the on-site preservation of existing native communities. As shown here, REZ2024-00010 proposes a 3-acre conservation easement in total on both properties under that zoning action, thereby providing over 3.5 acres the required indigenous vegetation preservation. REZ 2023-00005 proposed a approximately 4.7 acre conservation easement, thereby providing more than the required indigenous vegetation preservation. As stated before, a modification has been submitted to the original ERP for the neighboring sites to include the subject property associated with this request and make it one development. The applicant established that the development of the property will be required to meet the state permitting requirements as well as land development code requirements regarding environmental impacts, airport compatibility, open space, buffering, and landscaping requirements, which are established in LDC section 10-416D at the time of development order approval. The property is located within the Tradeport Future Land Use category, which is a future suburban area, and adequate urban services are available to the site. Lee County Utilities has provided a letter of availability ensuring sufficient capacity to provide service to the site. However, there are no connections available for the subject property, and further improvements will be required to provide connections at the time of development order. South Trail Fire Station and emergency medical services are a little less than 3 miles from the site, and South Trail Fire Station approximately that as well. Lee County Sheriff's Department main headquarters is about 6.5 miles from the site, and the site does not directly abut a Lee Tran route. However, Bus Route 50 is located less than a mile to the west along Treeline Avenue, with the nearest bus stop within less than a mile of the site, which is outside the extended pedestrian shed. So to conclude today's presentation, the request for a conventional rezone from general commercial to light industrial meets the review criteria for a conventional rezone request as set forth in LDC section 34-145. It is consistent with the Lee Plan and Land Development Code, provides consistency with allowable industrial development within the Tradeport to Future Land Use category. The rezoning will not result in negative impacts to urban services, infrastructure, or surrounding property. The subject property is sufficiently served by fire, police, and emergency services personnel. The request will not impact any wetland preserves or flood hazards or adversely affect environmentally critical or sensitive areas and natural resources. Staff recommends approval of the request and is available for any questions and concerns you may have.
Thank you. I did not have any questions. Did applicant have any questions of staff?
No questions.
Thank you. Thank you both. It was very thorough, the staff report and the presentations today, so I have what I need to make my decision. That should be forthcoming fairly quickly because, again, I'm familiar with this with the other properties that we rezoned not too long ago. So thank you for coming today. I appreciate everyone. Please stay well. Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.